Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities Show. We are recording here about 10 minutes before the close on Thursday. We're doing it a little early this week. I'm going to be traveling this weekend, so we're doing it a little bit early, Thursday before the close. My name is Ben Maldonado. As always, I'm here with my partner, Barry Hederachi. Barry, how we doing?
Doing good, doing good.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
mhm.
When you and I were talking, the theme for the show this week, people, is Barry and I were the feeling we have is the time window is open, right? And we're going out the window. The question is, do we fly out of the window, fly higher, or do we fall out of the window and head lower? And that question, honestly, has not been answered yet.
Mhm.
But we do have the levels. We do have the timing we know we're in, but we have the levels, and we're going to explore the price action for the first 4 days this week, what it told us, and what we need to watch next week to know the answer to that important question. Because the move out of here, I think you'll agree with me, Barry, the move out of here is going to be a big one.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's going to make a difference no matter what time frames you trade. So, it,
There's the S&P. Let's dive in. Let's
yeah,
dive
let's
in.
let's let's get right into it. We well, we left last week at 62.80 being the key level for the cash that, if we can hold above it, essentially 62.80, let's say essentially 63, we can hold above that, that we could expect it to move higher. And we even questioned, well, once it moved higher, what's the next thing we're going to be looking for? We're going to be looking for a lower high to see if we get some kind of reversal here, because the high that did came in, at a critical level, at a critical price level on the weekly charts, from a couple of different points. So it's something you just can't really ignore. It came in on the daily charts as well. So we're 108 degrees up, right, from the low in April. So a couple of, there were enough things to for us to be concerned about a high. We talked about, managing risk at the high, the time we were getting into that high, right before that false break. So far, I mean, all that to say, so far it seems like, all right, we're traveling down the same path. We're thinking along the same way as the market's sort of behaving. And now that we have a lower high, usually we'd be chomping at the bit to get short, which which you can do. I mean, no problem on the short term, right? But here, looking at the longer term, it's a bit of a, I think, not to make things overcomplicated, but I think we have two levels to deal with. We have the level, the high, let's say 63.86, resistance up here. But when we get to the weekly charts, you guys will see why the high is so important. But we'll pick the levels out of the weekly, but that's where the high really kind of cements in. And we're dealing with 62.80. And we talked about this earlier. As long as we're holding above 62.80, the market's positive, it's net positive, and it's on firm grounds. And that's all there is to it. We could do all kinds of shenanigans up here. We could correct all the way down to 62.80. We can correct down to 63, consolidate in however pattern we want to. As long as we end up above 62.80, the cash is in pretty good shape. And if you notice, we have a low, higher low. So whatever happens here, if we get any kind of a pullback, technically, long as that's a higher low and we reverse, that's still good, right? That's still positive. So, so what's going to make it negative? Well, what's going to make it negative is actually if we get below 62, 62.80, and what the futures is about. Yeah, we'll get to the futures in a minute. We'll look at the numbers there. But here, as long as we're above that, this is basically the daily. Of course, when you get to lower time frames, now we can fine tune it to better numbers for the shorter term. But the daily 62.80 really is the number we have to rely on for now for support. Okay, resistance we already hit and we reversed, and we ran back up again, and today we sold off. And I was just telling Ben right before the show, the question is, and I think that's how we kind of bumped into the whole idea of, we're going to fall out or fly out, because it's either, the sell off today is a good flush, get ready for a move in the coming days, or we just sold off at the beginning of the sell-off from the lower high. And that's the thing to sort of decide, right? That's the thing to figure out. And and looking at the pattern, it's until I see it, it'd be nice to have tomorrow's price, see what happens, but calling it on Thursday at the close, I would say, regardless, I think that's the thing to watch. So let's move on to the futures chart. Take a quick look at that.
I mean, Barry, the key thing, like you showed on the S&P, is that 6280, right? If we get
Yeah.
stuck under that, that's when you get worried. As long as we're above it, it's bullish.
Well, it's not just worried. I think if we get, yeah, worried, sure. But I think if we get stuck below that, I think we can expect lower prices into September. I mean,
Like it,
you
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah. Like you could see, at least a half square move
Right. And at
type of
least 30
move,
days, 30-day correction sounds normal. So
right?
I think that's what's on tap. And that's why we want to really sort of have a plan and have a bracket to see, when is it? I mean, you can be out the window, but when is it going to be falling versus flying,
Flying.
right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's the thing we want to know. All right, let's take a look at, all right, here's our futures chart. So here, the 180 degrees up ended up being 63.28. You can see, we ran up and reversed. So the question is, what happens? What happens here? I'd say the story is the same. We want to watch 63.28, 63.28, 63, yeah. And to make sure if we can hold it. Like today, we managed to get down there pretty close, and then we sort of, you know, found support, started moving higher. You can see Monday's price action was very, very positive. Tuesday, Wednesday, we more or less held above the 63.28 area, and today, obviously, the low came in above that. So we have air about the level. This is what I mean. It's a little bit trickier than normal, and if we get into some zone like what we had to deal with last, starting in December, January, you know how nuts that was. Not that it can't, something like that can't happen again. But here, I think weakness of strength will quickly be rewarded in that same direction. So I think I don't think we're looking for this. I think we're looking for something like, some kind of a move down or some kind of a move up, and this is going to be sort of the pivotal area. And I think I can't see why this 180 can't be that. And it's so far it's playing the role. And you can see how early July we were sitting right under it, tap, 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 right? Really couldn't get under. We had a little triangle here, false break to the downside. There's a flush, right? Ran back up. That's the picture. Again, now we have a level to see where the breakdown will come. And I think that's the important thing. Also another thing to remember, talking about Gann and Gann lines and angles and so forth and so on. 2 by 1 that I have drawn in, long as where price is above that, it's essentially it's pretty strong. You really don't want to mess around with it, nearly really if it's above that kind of a steep angle. And I would also say that about a 1 by 1, but this applies even doubly so. And that's another reason I'm saying I think it's, and you can see how we're kind of meeting that angle from below is sort of meeting next week. So if we're going to break, we're probably going to break both at once. So we're also coming into a sort of a price and time of its own,
Yeah,
which would be 90, right?
Monday is
Hmm.
90. Yep,
90,
Monday's
yeah. So
90
we
from
have,
the low. It's
yeah.
Monday.
So we have a 90 in time, and then we have 180 in price, and we're going to be, and this is, I think this is why the feeling of like, oh my God, which way it could go either way, because we could actually run up tomorrow, come back and tap it and bounce and be just fine, to the upside. We have a little bit more run. If we give it a run, we can run. And if we take out the highs, we could really run. And I'll tell you why when we look at the weekly charts. But for now, I think that's sort of a good frame. So 63.28 for the futures market. Well, here's the continuous chart from last October, kind of where this whole thing got started. We were 720 bars late July, and 2, 3 bars from the high, I'd say is close enough, for two cycles out. It's okay. and we were up 360 degrees from the low in October. So kind of a big deal. And here, now we're starting to look at resistance. Okay, so earlier we looked at the support level, what we had to break. So here we have, 6402 seems like the level to watch, and you can see how we poked right at it. We poked at that level, and we reversed. So, but if you look at the lows, we're making lower highs, so it looks to be intact. And the reason that we're watching this is, yeah, we have a lower high. Anytime we have a lower high, sort of pushing up against some kind of resistance level, you won't really want to watch it. I haven't checked, there any kind of retracement percentages or anything, because I normally just work with the lines. But if you guys have that, then maybe you can check it out. I don't know what retracement that is, but anyway, it did reverse. We couldn't hold about that 64, 63, yeah, 63.94. All right, so that's the story, and this is from the October lows, and we'll look at the other lows on the weekly chart. Let me jump over there. So here's the weekly coming from the '09 low, and we're also 360 degrees up on this square from that low.
Beautiful price and time right there.
Beautiful price and time. And here the high comes at about 64.30, 64.32. Um, Gosh, what else can I say? We did go up and tap that. So I think I mean, the thing to watch now is it's all about the price action and what pattern happens here. And obviously, we're watching the lower time frame. We trade the 30 minutes. So if you guys trade lower time frames, follow us on X. We post daily 30-minute charts and a commentary, and then you post the Nasdaq, and it's all up there. As far as the weekly goes, nothing's really changed so far because that high is in place, and if we kind of maintain the same sort of volatility, we're probably going to have an inside bar. And if we have an inside bar, then next week you guys know what to do. We'll easily know which ways, if it's flying or falling, depending on which side of the bar we take out.
Absolutely. It helps you get a jump, you know? You
Hmm.
get a jump, right? This is the side I need to focus on.
Exactly. And if it's an outside bar, sometimes, markets do an outside reversal on top of the inside instead of just taking out one side. So watch out for that and go with the latter, right? Even if you're jumped in, you need to be able to reverse and jump in on the other side because that one usually goes. And if you go back and look at examples, you'll see plenty of them. So that's something to check. And that's it. That's it for the cash. Let me take a look. Let's take a look at the futures. So on the continuation, this is from the 2020 low. I guess the important thing is I drew up this. You guys can go back and check the video back when we did that. But I drew up we talked about, what happens if remember we had this big ABCD target, the 61, 66. Is that right? Yeah, 61, 66 level. And we talked about, well, where is it going to stop? And we would, we kind of figured, the market normally goes from 50% to the full square. So we end up getting through this, taking out this high, we're probably going to end up at 65.30 at the most. I'm sorry, 65.06 at the most, and 6400 being the first level of, first target. And then I put in this zone up here. I guess I did it when the markets were here thinking it's going to break right up. That's why the zone is on top of that. So, the zone is 6400 to 6530. And I remember saying, well, it's a big range, but that's kind of what it looks like on a weekly chart. And it's not so bad, better than no target. So anyway, the point is we got there, and that is resistance. So another reason to be a little bit cautious, because if really that's what the case is, we could mess around a little bit longer before we sort of give it up. And why do I say that? Well, you saw what happened last year coming into January. I remember talking about this every Friday, oh my God, we're in the same price. We didn't take it out. And then in 2021, the same story, before we dropped, all kind of shenanigans here, not as long as in 24, but you can see, we made a high, then we came down, reversed up, false, reversed up, two bars up, one down, go back up a little bit, then a false break and a reversal. I mean, we had a little bit of everything on that high, you know, and if we were looking, um, this 4702 would have been the level because it's coming up the same low, same square. And, so we would have been talking about that 50%, right? 4707. What would happen once we take that out? Then we'd expect the market to trade lower. At least, we will go in halves or full squares. Sure enough, we went full square after this first half was taken out, right? We were 90 by 135. And from there, we started the big move, the larger move higher. Anyway, all that to say, it can get a little tricky around the corner, but what we're really trying to find is, where is it going to go? How much of a move do we have, left in it? And now it looks like, we found the area, something happening here. And just like what happened back in, late 24, the key here is to know, are we going to take it out? Or are we going to fail here? And the point, the thing about the window that Ben mentioned is we do have a bunch of cycles expiring this week. And just like we talk about squares, if we hold it, if the highs made this week holds and we take out some key levels, like the numbers that we talked about, and we'll look at some other numbers on the 30-minute, then I would say unbalanced because of the cycles and because where we are in the bigger phase, I would say, we can be down for the rest of the month in that case. Now, if for some reason we break out, then, then we're flying because once you take out a square level or a critical cycle high where a number of cycles come in, if that gets blown out to the upside, which means the cycle just got extended or another bigger cycle is working, then you just have to run with that. Ben, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that makes perfect sense. You
Okay.
gotta we gotta watch price versus the level, through Monday, Tuesday, and then we can
Hmm.
have higher confidence in what's going to come next.
Exactly. So what's been coming next on the 30-minute would be we've been making higher lows and higher highs, right? So we're kind of trending higher. We held last week. Remember, we left it at that's where we left it, right? Yeah, we left it on Friday or we recorded Saturday. That's right. But we talked about how this was a critical support. I had that zone marked out, and you can see we held it there, came up, held it here. See the little battle at the zone. Anyway, the market kept making higher lows and higher highs, and eventually tapped 6409, almost 6432, which is a really strong level, and the fact that we almost got there. And then, this morning the deal was sure we could pull up, we could correct down to 6387 and still be fairly healthy. We have good structural support here. And if we've been in sort of a buying mode, I can see holding here and then rallying. And if we were super strong, we would just basically stick around 6409 and then try to rally. But if we take out 6387, obviously if we take out good support, then I have nothing in between. You can see we would just drop right into 6341 and even dipped a little below. But anyway, it found its traction just like it did last Friday. Basically, it caught the drop. It takes a little bit of a spring, and then same thing happened here. It caught the down move, and now we have a rally in the way. So the question is, was that a flush, or are we just slowly rolling over, right? Slowly rolling over, meaning this being the high. We have a high, first drop, lower high. What happens here? Well, it's easy. I would say to watch 6387, and we're going to watch 6341. Now we have our brackets pretty tight. Below 6341, I think if we really can't get above 6350, market's going to be in some trouble. If we can hold that, no matter what kind of chaos up here, if we can hold this 63, 60, 40 level, we can bounce around and probably push a little higher. And if we, on this run without the whole, a deeper pullback, we can get above 387, somehow consolidating that area, or even above 64. Then we're ready to go, we're ready to move a little higher. Anyway, that's how I'm looking at it, which is not too different from how we normally look at these markets using squares.
I mean,
We
look at the
want,
beauty. Look at the beauty of that 30-minute square, Barry. Basically, you have a full square, move, right? High
yeah,
to
from
low.
here. Hmm.
Yep, from the last swing high to low. And then look where the battle point is, 50% of the square.
50%. Exactly. I mean, classic, right? It's
Yeah.
classic stuff.
Yeah. I
Very
mean,
good.
that's why
Yeah.
we use them, right? It gives us the
Hmm.
grid that if you take that grid off, try trading that then.
No, thanks. I mean, we're not asking for much, just a couple of lines, please.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely right. This is textbook. We have the full square. We're back at 50%. And really, you can see that, we have a little bit of air here. We have a little bit of air here. So if you
Hmm.
move that down, this 50% goes down about the same amount. So the 50% would roughly be right around the low today.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. No, I see.
So,
Yeah.
so
Just
that
square
gap
down
and
a little
that gap,
bit.
yeah, that
Yeah.
gap matches up.
Yep.
So I think technically, although it looks a little crazy from the outside, technically it's trading pretty well. So I'm not gonna complain about it, but I'm just trying to set you guys up for next week and tomorrow by knowing where the bracket is. So I think if you just know these two numbers and how we looked at the
It's
bracket,
huge. Those two
yeah,
numbers are huge.
yeah,
And so let's make sure people understand the importance of it.
mhm,
63.87, 63.41.
that's right. And we hammered how, how to use that bracket, and you guys have the one for the daily. So I guess everything's in place. You guys have everything. All right, let's jump over to bonds. Had a pretty good
Mark,
week.
another
Mhm.
market that hit a critical spot, right?
Yeah, pretty good week right into our level. So 45 degrees down. I kept saying the 16, 16, what is it, 16, 14, 16 and a half. This area is really where the resistance is. And we did it here. And now if you notice, what happened the other day was it's essentially a false break above this high, back in June or
Yep.
July,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So and then we reversed pretty hard. We took out two lows just in one day. And now we're basically on an inside day. So let's watch the bonds. I think this is resistance. For me, as long as we can get above this 16, 16, 14, this is really on the soft side. We're watching that on the sell side till we get above. When we were down here in a false break, we talked about it going up here, and it did. And I didn't think it would come all the way back and do a false break, but yeah, hey, we've been stuck in this range for a while, so I think it's to be expected. And well, now you know a little bit
And
more.
enough too, Barry, on the 4 hour. I know we don't cover 4 hours here, but for the 30 year, we had a 36 by 90 at that high where we reversed.
Oh, okay, okay.
So
That's good. That's a good number. That makes
yes, it
sense why it
is.
reversed so hard, right? So,
Yep. It finished a 90. Yep.
mhm. So pushing into that on the daily, we got about 114 on the weekly. So that's been sort of the last year, that's been better part of this year. That's been the key level to watch because we've been rotating around that in kind of a little bit of a triangle. Let's see. I mean, idea is, if we can hold above 114, let's say we don't exactly get above the 45-degree level on the daily, but we hold above the 114, then we have to kind of pay attention to see somehow we're going to get, maybe another drive up or not. But whatever, for that to happen, the 45-degree level has to be taken out. So that's, I think that would be the way to frame that, the 114, 116, 14, 116 and a half level. So that's the weekly. So crude starting to drop a little bit, starting to test the lows. We're still doing pretty good trend wise after the big flush that we wanted. It's interesting, we were looking for that and a move up, and we got that and a move up, but not the kind of quite move up that I kind of imagined. But we're holding about the trend line as for now. Really, the critical level is 61.61. I mean, this is the zone like we had on the 30-minute or the daily. We drop a little zone. And that zone also has pretty good structural support. Let's see how we do here. Not a big fan of selling through all the stuff that's happening and trying to hold these things overnight. So let's see what happens if the support holds. I would rather wait for some kind of positive setup and take the long trade the long side as we get going. But 61 is the level you want to watch. And on the weekly, we're kind of, we're in that zone again. Let's see what happens. It might be another little mini flush trying to take out these lows that came in after we blew out into the high in June. So it's possible. I would I would watch that. I'm talking about blowing out these lows, which we did, yesterday, today. We're right there, okay, at those levels. So we'll see what happens. Last few weeks, we've been talking about how bullish gold looked, even though, copper and everything, they took around, everybody, all the metals took a hit, dropped down, but, gold and silver, very, not much, it didn't go very, very steep, held its own pretty well. Kept talking about this triangle, even last week, how this is how gold moves, and as long as we're above 338, expect gold to break higher. 34.30 was the level we had to hold above. Not to hold above, that was kind of the key breakout level, I would say. And you can see this week we started pushing higher and higher. And you can see, we talk about this inside day method to get in. Yesterday was inside bar, and today we work out in that direction nicely. So that's that. Let's take a look at the weekly. Weekly, we talked about last week, this 32.94 being important, long as we're holding above that basis, the weekly chart and a weekly square, that gold's in pretty good shape. And really the only thing left is to go challenge the old highs, 35.08. And it looks like we're on the way to do that. Gosh, what can I say? Gold looks good. It's bullish. What, what else could it be, right? We're near all-time high. So the key here was to catch the support, know where its support was, and to sort of see how it's going to fold out from there. And we were okay on that. We've been bullish, and it's not just now, you guys. We've been bullish since what, 2019, 2018, even as
Yeah.
far
I
as
mean,
I can remember.
it's another high level consolidation. That's what this
Yeah.
thing does. It rips higher, then it consolidates for a couple months, and then it rips again.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I think, yeah, from around here we used to be. I can't
Yep.
remember when we
50,
started doing the show, but anyway,
yeah.
been a while. All right. So that's gold. Take a quick look at silver. Silver, well, we talked about $40 silver. We talked about it 360 degrees up from the 2022 low. And that was a pretty major high. So expected some kind of a correction. It's either going to be the half or the quarter. We stalled out at the quarter, good structural support, and we got about 37.70. So, now silver is in good shape. I would say as long as we're above 37.70, pullbacks can be played. Now, we come into the question of, silver put in a pretty major high, kind of like copper. Um, the question is this next lower high going to be something we're going to be looking to sell? I would say let's wait and see how that unfolds, maybe into next week, and we can look at that later. But for now, that $40 looks pretty good. It's possible we go up and make another lower high or maybe even a false break. But that being said, the fact that this correction was, I mean, it looks like a normal, healthy correction, a very bullish correction for silver. So I'd say as long as we're above 37.70, it could sort of probably impulse higher to at least test the 40 out. So it's looks bullish, unless we take out 37.70 before that. There is a silver chart, and that's what I meant, when we hit the upper channel and the 90 up from that low from 2020, and we reversed. So, are we ready to move higher? Well, let's see. I'd like to see a little bit more price action to see if we can take out this last bar. And, I think we're good for a little bit, mainly because we held above the center channel line. So probably got a little bit left. Take a look at copper. Pour it out, 120 by 180 up there. And I mean, we took out all the levels. And now we're stuck below 447. And 447 is 50% here. Kind of a critical level. And we're doing a little bit of a triangle that doesn't look very bullish. So, but it looks, I mean, the fact that we held here, copper's, copper's not going to fool around too much. So we held pretty well above structural support. or at structural support. And we have all the way to 423. So I think this is looking a little bearish. It's possible we break and we flush that low out before we do anything else. But if we happen to take out 447, then I would take a look at, it being a little bit more bullish setup. Bullish for what? Well, bullish for the next retracement. Nice healthy one, get us up to about 495 at least. Yeah, that's all I can say for now. Not much to do in this little tight triangle, so let it be. And here's the weekly. And the reason I said that triangle looks a little bearish and can break to the downside, where we have 424 as 144 degrees up from the 2020 low, and that would give us a nice clean square and a half correction. I came in at the 50% level, tapped it. I remember talking about it at the time, or the time before that. And yeah, but even if we get here, we're very bullish. We're in great shape. We look at the lower highs. I mean, the trend is intact. Sloppy trend for sure, but nonetheless, it's some kind of a trend, right? So you have to kind of go with it,
Yep. No
right?
question.
Yeah. So that's copper. Let's take a look at the dollar. Well, dollar did have that pop. We ran up into the zone up here, 99.50, 99, three quarters. We have 100. So equal move would have been a little bit higher than that. Anyway, this looks like, it looks okay. Though it did come in June, and we were looking for it to trend higher, which it has done so far. But I'm not expecting anything huge until we can get above the 72-degree level, the square. That will be at a 101 key number, 101.70. Up until then, hanging around here, consolidating, I think is positive. So see what happens, and we want to watch these lows until we find support. I'm not a big fan of jumping in front of trucks, or trains or falling knives. So let's watch it and let it correct normally and see where we get a reversal. All right. So moving on to the weekly dollar, we had the low square out. We had a nice move up, impulse leg up, and I guess this will be the correction. So we're waiting for the correction to finish. As long as we get a higher low, we're in pretty good shape. I'm
Get
guessing
a
if we can.
higher low. If we get a higher low, that reversal it could be massive because that'll be the third wave.
That's true. Yeah, you can take one too, right? Yeah, that would be a
Yep.
pretty good one. Yep, yep.
Yep.
So let's watch. Let's watch for this, and it looks good so far. And it's good to know this is in place. So once it's complete, we can watch for the reversals, and I'm sure we'll be able to cover it next week, next Friday. Let's move on to the euro. Well, euro also had a little bit of a counter trend, making lower lows. We were able to get above 1650, and that's probably about the max it can push to the other side. So let's
Hmm.
wait to see if we reverse here. I think then we're going to continue the downtrend. And if we don't, well, we still have a little bit of space to go and still come in at a lower high. Pretty much the same story as a dollar, but in reverse. So let's watch that. Looking at the weekly euro, we found support right at the old structural support highs. 1654 is the level here we want to watch, and we're at 1663. We're right there, right in there with the line. Like I said, we're moving lower. Let's see how this counter trend wraps up. We have an inside bar this week, so next week's going to be important. Let's watch it. The highs and lows that came in between the euro and the dollar, they all look fairly good up until now. So that's that. Let's move on to Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin found, we had a cycle expire at the high at 180-degree level, and we were looking for prices to come down, trade lower, which it did, came all the way down to structural support high in May. And the dotted green line is 1/3 of the square. There's two of them. There's 1/3, 2/3 full square. And it found support at the 1/3 and moving higher to test this area again. Now let's see how that works out, because this is a very strong resistance. And if we can maybe get a higher low and push, that might give it a little bit more extra momentum. but the low looks good. I mean, it's on structural support. It's on one third of the square, very measured, kind of a correction. So I'm guessing the low looks good. And if we can sort of grind through this, I think we can expect higher prices, at least temporarily, for now. Um, I'm not sure if we have enough um, sort of depth of buyers to get this up above 125 or, hitting up to the 50% level, but 132. I'm not so sure at this point. I'm seeing this more as, probably going to go retest this and then consolidate some more and to consolidate the gains, I suppose, right? Because we did have a good break to the upside. So I'm not completely positive, but I think it's not completely negative either in the market. I think it's probably looks like we're going to consolidate in this bracket. This is one third. So that's my take for now. So, and you can probably trade it from corner to corner in either direction. All right, let's take a look at the Hang Seng. We held well above the 24,086 and above structural support. So I think the market looks okay, and I'm expecting it to trade higher. To the upside, we have 26,240 as resistance. As long as we don't take out this prior low, back in July, I think market's in good shape. And that's all I got. We went a little fast today because we're both sort of on vacation, so lots of other things going on. And I'll try to. Oh, if you can hang around, I'll pull up the Palantir chart. We'll take a look at that after
At
Ben's
the
segment is
end.
done. Yeah, at the
Yeah.
end, so we
Yep.
can cover that. All right, let me put it back to you, Ben. We'll look at the Nasdaq and all the commodities.
Excellent.
Mhm. All right, Ben. Yeah, that's exactly right. 22,820. That's exactly where we stalled. And we talked about it last week. And sure enough, we got the bounce. Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So not too different or dissimilar than the S&P, right? The S&P
Mm-hmm.
there's a little bit more ambiguity because it's right at the line. Here, we came down, tested it, and have bounced. Now we got to see, are we gonna make a higher high? Is it going to be a false break high, or are we going to push and get all the way up to the 24,260?
Mm-hmm.
Much like the S&P, timing is coming up, right? Got 90 on Monday, and that's part of the timing window that we've been talking about,
Mm-hmm.
so we're watching price action there. But as you can see, the key number is this 22,820. As long as we're above it, the odds favor a bullish, result and resolution. That's really it for the daily, just that support held and we're pushing. I do want to show you the calendar day chart just for something interesting. Barry, you'll appreciate this. You were talking about Gann lines. Look at the one by one from coming from the top.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do make a lower high and reverse here, this one by one is pretty important, right? Because it will have
Mm-hmm.
stopped and given us a reversal. Also, on this particular chart, the half squares at 23.5, and we're sort of stalling there.
Yeah.
So we
Right.
got to we got to pay attention to that and see, where does it get us? The 90 here, because this is calendar day, right? August 9th, right in there, August 9th. So this weekend. So that we know the timing window's there. There's a lot of evidence. We've talked about it. I just wanted to show this as again a different, sort of view that as to why we're potentially stalling here, and that if we get through, there's a lot of room to run, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pull this
Absolutely.
down, and the next resistance is way up here. Let's see, where are we? 20, almost 25,000. So that's what we're looking at. Let's check the weekly. There's your weekly. So far, an inside bar.
Mm-hmm.
We came up, tapped resistance here at the high, at that full square, which on this chart's a 135. If we get an inside bar next week, we know to watch the high and the low for clues as to which direction we'll go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to focus on the monthlies this week because there's just that one bar. I mean, very little price
Yeah.
action so far, so not much to talk about there. Anything you want to add on the NQs?
No, I think we're both kind of in the same boat with the S&P. Just the fact that, we're waiting to see how it plays out come Monday, Tuesday. Critical
Hmm.
days right around that 90 cycle. And we want to see what kind of reversal we get or not, and really key off the levels.
That's it. That's the
Hmm.
summation, right? Watch price action into Monday, Tuesday. See where's price in relation to the level. Based on that, you could tell the odds of which way is favored.
Yeah, it's like keep calm and watch the levels, right?
That's it. All right, let's take a look at Bitcoin. Barry did you a little preview. I'll show you what my view looks like. The key thing I thought here was the structural support, right? Pulled
Hmm.
right back to it. Now we're pushing. The next important level on the upside is this 119,790. If we can clear it, get on top of it, then we do open up to 131, 132. If we don't, then it's back to 108.
Right.
We do have a 45 coming in today, and
Hmm.
you can see this thing has done 45s low to high. Right here was a decent one, right? 45 calendar days low to high. Could we do 45 low to a high here? Possibly. Again, it's another piece of timing evidence telling us we're in this window that's super important, and we got to watch the price action versus these important levels. Let's take a look at the Bitcoin weekly, and you can see here we have a lower low this week. Um, Unless we get a big push tomorrow, it will be another down bar for the week. But the key levels, I don't think we can look off the weekly for the key levels. The key levels are here on the daily.
Right.
119,790 up top, 108,330 on the bottom. So watch those levels. And that's Bitcoin. I guess you don't have anything else to add, right? Since you covered Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, it looks good. Looks good.
Okay.
Comments are good.
Um, on the commodities, the interesting developments here in the grains that we're going to go over. Sugar, I'm not going to go over. It's still determining whether or not it's going to put in the higher low
Hmm.
on a daily basis. Cocoa and coffee have, so we'll look at those. So let's quickly run through these. We have more commodities than usual this week, but I'll show you why. Let's start with wheat. Look at this little move, Barry,
Yeah,
in the last 2 days, right?
beautiful. Yep, yep.
Came down, false break, right?
Hmm.
False break with the low, and then a
Snap.
big strong reversal today.
And he's at the
False
right
break,
place finally.
yep, into a half square with a reversal. Now,
Mm.
the other thing on a daily basis, we did 22 by 36. So there's
Yep.
there's a decent square there, but
Hmm.
this is the price action you usually see at lows. Now we're super early. Like this happened today and yesterday. These are two bars, but I just
Right.
wanted to show you because this is kind of the signature that you see at lows in commodities. Does that mean we're 100% at a low in wheat? Absolutely not. Right? We need to see the price action to follow. I'd like to see a couple more up days, then pull back and give us a higher low, and then another reversal.
Mm.
But this is about as early as you can get, in starting to scope it out. We're not going to look at the weeklies. We're not going to look at the monthlies. I just wanted to show you on a daily because it doesn't even really show up on the other two.
Mm.
Actually, let's look at, I think it does a little bit well, the only thing you can see here is the false break. So there's your false break. And you can look back and see we've been making these little false breaks here, and now here's another one. So let's see how this one plays out. But that's classic right there. Into the half square with a strong reversal the day after. Anything else you want to add on this, Barry? I know it's super early.
Well, I think it's time to start watching because as soon as we take out that line you draw on there, the 1/8 line,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we can start cooking toward the other end. So,
Yes, sir.
or it could be the start of a leg. We have to because we've pushed the cycle so far out. Um,
Right. And I mean, look how long we've been doing this.
mhm,
Since
exactly.
October, November of 2023.
Mm-hmm,
We've been
mm-hmm.
doing this sideways. And that's how
And
commodities go, right? They boring moonshot.
yep, yep.
So anyway, we'll look at the others as well. Let's jump over to corn.
But I mean, the whole point here is to start tracking it now because
At,
it's at a critical point. So,
looks pretty similar to the wheat bar, doesn't it?
yep, sure does.
But look at this. Look at this. So we squared out here, right?
Mm-hmm,
On 72 by 144 essentially. And then we squared out again. Came right down, tapped it, and then reversed. Now on corn on the daily basis from this February 19th, February high, right?
mm-hmm.
February 19th high, we did 72 by 120 to this low. And corn likes to do 120. The grains, I've been noticing that they like to do 60s and 120s in addition to the 90s.
Mm-hmm,
So you got 120 right here. And it's right on the full square support. Just at a good spot.
mm-hmm.
Let's take a quick look at the weekly, see what that shows. Ah, yeah, this is important. ABCD finish,
Yep, it's good.
right into the low and ABCD.
Mm-hmm,
Let's see. In the weekly, we did from this March 4th high. Where's that? Oh yeah, I went with not the false break high, but the week of March 4th high right here.
mm-hmm.
Not the false break high, but the high before the high.
Right.
90 by 180.
Wow.
So from here to here is 180.
Very nice.
Hmm. So pay attention to wheat, pay attention to corn for those reasons. Anything you want to add here?
Nope, we're good.
All right, let's take a look at the last one in the group. Let's look at beans. Now, beans didn't do something as dramatic as the other ones. Like it didn't
Mm-hmm,
come down and do a false break, but what it did do, you have a low here, you have a low here,
mm-hmm.
higher low here, and a higher low here.
Right.
So they tend to move in tandem, these ones. Like wheat was up almost 2% today, corn was up 1.4%, and beans were up over 1%.
Mm,
So something happened today. I don't know what happened in the grain market, but money came. It was a flush, and then yesterday, and they turned today.
right.
So let's watch this group. Let's watch it closely. We did a little 30 by 30 from here, from this high to this
Mm-hmm,
low, 30 by 30. So we did square out. So they're squaring out. They're doing false breaks. They came into support. Some of them on full squares or half squares, and then reversed hard the next day. It means they need to be on our radar. We need to watch them. Let's see if we get a decent push higher and then a pullback that gives us a higher low, and then we can really start aggressively trading these things. Anything else you want to add, not specifically on Beansberry, but the group and sort of how to treat this because it's super early?
Well, the thing to do is start tracking it. Okay? I think these cycles have been elongated for so long,
Hmm.
been elongating for so long. I think they can all move on very short notice. So, once we start getting these lower lows, we're coming up to key levels like half squares, full squares, and finding support, false breaks. Anytime you get those things near important areas, we really want to watch it because these markets love to just, you know, get everybody on the wrong directions and then move. I mean, look at the August
Oh,
move right before
uh,
that, ABCD up. You can
yeah,
see, did a follow false break there, just everywhere. So this is another one, and you got to watch them. And if we can,
absolutely.
yeah, and we can hold that low and start to put out a good pattern, then you can, it might be a longer term low in place.
Absolutely. And like I said, I watch the board and then when I see something, really like that hasn't been having a lot of activity one way or the other, positive or negative, and then I see this flash of green and these big numbers. I was like, oh, I got this. We got to watch this. Something's going
Hmm.
on here. And then you go
Hmm.
to the chart and you see the false break, you see the squares, and you say,
Right.
okay, it's on the radar now. It has to be watched closely.
Hmm.
And I feel that way about the grains. So I'm just trying to give everybody a heads up there on the grains.
Right.
All right, let's
Very
let's
good.
go to the
Good
next
stuff.
one. Yeah, let's go to the next one. Next one is cocoa. Remember, I said the softs. We last week in the last few weeks we've been watching sugar, we've been watching cocoa, we've been watching coffee for the long setups. Well, we got a higher low here on
Hmm.
on cocoa on the daily and a reversal. That's the key. We got the reversal. So what we want to watch, the key number here is this 85.91 on the full square. Once we clear that, this thing could really rocket. Right? We could
Mm.
really see a good move here because we'll have the higher low. The correction is done. We talked about all the squares and everything that came here, including a false break at the low. So now we're looking, we got the higher low and the reversal. So tomorrow and into next week, do we get enough of a strong enough push to take out this full square? Because when that happens, this thing could really fly.
Right.
I mean, we've seen, look, I mean, you see the crazy moves here, right?
Yeah.
When it goes, it goes. Both
Hmm.
ways, right? Both
Right.
ways.
Right. Right.
So, but 85.91 is key here. Let's watch this next week and see if we actually get the breakout. Let's take a quick look at the weekly just to give you another view. And you can see the
Hmm.
key number here is this 80.57. And look where we closed today. Let's see what happens tomorrow, but that's key on the weekly basis. We want to close over that, and then we got a shot at getting a bar next week that can clear it.
Yep.
But again, you see the higher low, right?
Hmm.
You got the higher low. Anything you want to add on cocoa?
No, no, I think we covered. I mean, most of it was covered last week. Now we have the low come in, so it's time to watch. And once that trend line's taken out, basis that daily, I think the longer term might set up a little bit cleaner.
hmm It'll be ready. Be ready for a
Hmm.
nice
Hmm.
move.
Hmm.
All right, let's go look at its Coco's Pal coffee. Pretty similar. Here we've got a little added bonus as we completed a little ABCD down here, and we're above this half square 290 and pushing, pushing, pushing on that downtrend line. So this one is really close to the breakout. And
Hmm.
unlike Coco, which has to move a little bit to get up above a full square, we just got to break out here, and then we're heading to the full square of 335.
Right, right.
So this one looks good. The low we isolated the low with squares with time counts. We had price and time. We had this little false break here. So the low looks good. Now we just got to see, can we get this thing rolling to the upside? Let's take a quick look at the weekly. There's the picture on the weekly. Here you can see the key numbers 305. We get that price closing the week over 305 and then get a full bar there, then it's off to the races.
Hmm.
But these look good, right? They look like good shots with good risk reward ratios. And that's basically what we look for when we're in these markets. The last one I want to show, Barry,
Hmm.
which you're going to be shocked, but I want to show it because it's starting to wake up from the dead. Nat gas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see that.
Look at this little flush we got here this week.
Hmm. Hmm.
Took out this low, took out this low, took out this low, a nice little false break. And again, I saw it, flashing up green yesterday and today
Hmm.
up, like 2%, up 1%.
Check out
This
the
thing,
inside bar.
yep,
Hmm.
yep. We had the flush, the false break, inside bar, took out that inside bar, and here we go. Now, let's say it's not going to 10 or 20 or anything crazy like that. But from where it is, $3 to 340, that's a hell of a
Oh,
move.
that's huge. Yeah.
Huge move.
Hmm.
So minimally what we could say here is we had a false break, we've reversed. This thing could bounce, higher up to this 340 resistance and be
Absolutely.
a decent trade.
Yep.
So keep the Widowmaker on your radar and I don't, I know this thing's tough to trade, Barry. Any advice you have here, given the structure and the false break here?
Well, advice on natural gas. Well, I
Don't
would
trade
say,
it.
and yeah, really, go elsewhere. Well,
Right.
look, the time to trade is when he's really trending. So I would say not to try to catch corners, but to wait till, your system actually goes green on the trend. You have to, it's got to be, make sure it's trending. And then, then you can start trading the counter trends in that direction. But this is not the one to trade corners, that's for sure.
Hmm. No
And,
question.
but the trend could be in a shorter time frame, it doesn't have to be weekly or the daily. So
Yeah, this is not a position call or anything. It's just
yeah,
we
a
had a we
reminder,
had a
right?
yeah, we had a reminder. We took out three different lows with a false break and reversed hard. That usually attracts money to come into that
I mean, after that,
commodity
I
or
mean, what
stock.
I'm talking about is after the false break in April and
Hmm.
finishing that ABCD and the false break. We had a nice move up. There was only two counter trends. They were both one day. Those are the things to trade. Easy money, right?
Absolutely.
So that's what I meant. Not to try to catch a corner.
Oh, not overstay your welcome, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. All right, so that's it for me on the commodity side. You can see things are perking up here. We got grains, we got a fuel, an oil type stock with that or commodity with natural gas. We got the softs. Of course, the metals have been doing well. They're correcting, but doing well. So things are perking up in commodity land. There's no question about that. Money is coming in. But
Mhm.
let's flip over and I know we had a request to do Palantir and review that. So let me send it back to you and have you go over Palantir and let's see what that's showing. The new market darling.
Yeah,
Oh, there's a little bit of resistance at the high, isn't there?
just a little. If only if you knew how important that is. Um,
Yeah.
it's funny how it gets to be the darling, right around the high when a decent high comes in.
Right.
And here it's really no joke. It comes up in the square nine. It comes up here. So I mean, just call it as it is. The 185 area, 185.86 is resistance. And I would say also go ahead and say that, if you notice, it likes to make this little 36-degree correction. So just like we did over here. So I would say, as long as we
Hmm.
can, any kind of a correction maintains above 167, all right, fine. We can say it has more to go. And that would be the case. But if we 167 goes, I think long-term direction might be changing. So we got to be careful. And if you guys are holding this from $6, then you gotta be, just be aware of this. Not that it's going to go to six, but from 167, it wouldn't hurt you in much. But that's the level to watch.
Well, there's a difference between falling from the top of a mountain and falling from a curb.
Right. Exactly. Hmm.
And this one is the former.
Yes.
Um, I mean, Barry, do you think it's possible that we could go up and like tap that 360 to end this thing?
It's possible, but not probable. I think this high is pretty good, and it
Hmm.
should it should give us some kind of a correction. So I'm guessing 167 would be the place to look. But
Hmm.
but before we get too much into it, let's look at the weekly. So this is the weekly coming up from the 22 low, which is pretty much where this whole thing business got started. And you can see, we're at 186, 180 degrees up is 186, and we're at 182. Yeah, we're in the territory. Yeah, sure, we can go 185, we can go 187, but you get the idea, right? We're within half a
The
percent.
zone. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in the zone, and these big zones are important. Either, we talk about probability. The two choices are very clear because we're at a square level. Either going to get on top and shoot, or we're going to have some kind of a correction before we move further. So, and I'm thinking it's going to probably correct,
Hmm.
especially when we start gapping into these levels. I mean, anytime you start gapping, yeah, you could do a few more, but for how much longer you can continue that? And last time we gapped, you can see we gapped, you know, right up, and then we had that big correction that
Yeah.
lasted for a while. So
Sure.
those are the kinds of things that can happen at the end of gaps. So, I'd watch it very carefully, and especially at this level. 180 is an important level, 85, 87, but 167, as long as we're above that, okay, fine. Um, my other thing is, well, why bother to hold so much risk, if there's that kind of a thing on a on a weekly basis,
Sure.
which is kind of a big deal, you
Yep.
know, why hold that? So that's my
Well, this,
take on Palantir. Let me see
uh,
if I got anything. Oh, hey, let me show you the monthly. So this is off the, well, it's again off the 22 low, well, the main low, the big low. And we're sorry, this is a calendar day, not a monthly. Uh, so calendar day, we're up 960 by, well, 720 by 960, coming right up into here, into tomorrow. So,
wow.
and that's kind of a big deal, right? I mean, how often
Sure.
do you hit
Sure.
those, those big numbers? So I would say, that's something we got to watch. And because of all of that coming in, and it's funny to get a request for this because probably have good sense of, you know, of cycles because we're coming right up into that. So that's tomorrow, let's say Monday, and we have these 90s hitting on some of the other markets, the S&P, Nasdaq, and
Yep.
here we're hitting some key levels from all the way back in 22. So anyway, that's my take, and those are the numbers. So from that low, we get to 187. You saw 185 on the board. So those are the levels we're working with. It's 186.
186. Yeah. It's all right in there.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Excellent.
A quick review, and it's enough.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah.
Mhm.
Keep sending the requests. We'll try and honor them and get them on the show. Great job, Barry. Good review. And everybody, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, rest up and good job. We'll talk to you soon.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.